Wyoming state parks and historic sites, the Wyoming State Motorized and Non-Motorized Trails Programs, and the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Office. So without further ado, Dave Glenn.
Good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning, everybody. All right, let's roll. As Dan mentioned, I've been really fortunate to be involved in the outdoor recreation, outdoor education, conservation industry my whole life. The nut I've been trying to crack the last 6 or 7 years, the thing that I've really been focused on is the topic of this conference, building it the way we want it. I don't know how many hours I've spent over an MSR stove, in a bar, over a campfire, having conversations with recreation providers, recreation users, professionals in the industry, people from other countries, trying to figure this piece out. So thank you for putting this together. My wife loves to train horses. So do I. We've been involved with horses our whole life. Through some bad luck and through some good luck, we ended up with 4 or 5 new horses last fall. Some were green broke, some were broke to ride. One wasn't broke at all. My wife is very methodical in how she trains horses. She puts them in a round pen. She lays the groundwork. She builds the foundation for them. Not me. I throw my leg over the saddle and I figure out the horse as we go along. I can tell you this because my wife's not here. Her way is better than mine. So that's what I feel my job is today, is to kind of just lay the groundwork for the conversation before we throw that leg over the horse and start figuring out how to move forward. So before we start, I need your help. I need you to shout out. I need you to blurt right now 3 words or less on why you choose to live in Wyoming. Go, Mike.
Great outdoors.
Great outdoors.
Big empty.
The big empty.
Wildlife.
Did I hear no people? Few people. Wildlife. Mountains. Rocks. What else? Rocks again. Awesome trails. What was the other one? Public land. Great. Good people. Freedom. Excellent. Wind and snow. I love I-80. Exactly. Access. Access is a great one. So let me ask you a question. Why would we sit here and talking about building new outdoor recreation infrastructure if these are our values? And I'm going to call them values. The big empty, wild places, few people. Why would we do that? We're going to attract more folks. They're going to spend more time here, and it's going to take away from those values. That's the first question. The second question is, if we decide to do it, how are we going to do it? How do we share and promote these values while preserving and protecting them at the same time? Those are the 2 big questions in my mind. I'm going to take a stab at the why. Hopefully the how we can figure out the next couple of days. Mark Tesoro's in the crowd. Mark called me about 3 years ago, and he said, we want to start this Southwest Off-Road Trails program in Evanston. And we're tired of people driving by with their quad runners and OHVs, getting gas at getting gas at the Maverick, hitting Mickey D's, getting back on the freeway and heading east somewhere. We want to create a destination in Evanston, and we want to connect all these roads and trails that are already existing and build a route for people to stay in Evanston, but be able to go to Fort Bridger for the weekend or for the day and come back to Evanston. Go to the Uintas, go to the Wyoming range, go to Cameron, maybe Fossil Butte, LaBarge, Big Piney, Pinedale. We want to create this. And they did it right. And they started holding public meetings. And there was a lot of concern, legitimate concern. Going to be more trespassing potentially. What about impacts to wildlife? Roads are going to get trashed. There's going to be more litter. A lot of concerns. And during one of these public meetings, and I can't remember her name, Mark, and maybe you can, but there was a rancher lady that stood up, and she gets up, and she's obviously well-respected, older, and she walks up and she grabs a microphone, and I'm going to read her quote. If you think we're going to stop the growth of outdoor recreation and tourism in the community, you're wrong. That horse has left the barn. We need to find a way to manage it, or we're going to get run over. That is the why. That is the why we want to do it. Northern Utah is supposed to grow by 1 million people in the next 15 years. Utah is supposed to double in population from 2020 to 2040. Fort Collins, it's going to double by 2050. For those of you that live in Cheyenne or Laramie, you see it on Fridays. In state parks, we call it the Green Wave or the Green Navy. Here they come from the south, and they're towing their camp trailers. They've got their mountain bikes. They've got their quad runners. They've got their their boats, because they want the values that we have, and they don't have them there anymore. But there's also other concerns, right? Dan mentioned a few of those. Core sage grouse habitat, critical mule deer winter range, migration corridors, invasive species. We've got to figure this out. We have to figure out how to educate those people when they come, how to disperse them to communities that want them to share their type of outdoor recreation, and at times concentrate them. Steph Kessler took me on a trip in the Red Desert last summer, and you could tell that any road went to a spring where people camped on the weekends. 2 to 3 nights a week, deer, sage grouse, elk, that wildlife is not getting a drink because we are parked on that. Why not concentrate those folks? Why not create something that attracts people so we can protect those areas so our wildlife can thrive as we move forward? Outdoor recreation is also about livability too, right? I moved here in 1990. Brother and sister were born here. I was born in Utah, yes, and got here as soon as I graduated college. I came here because of the hunting and fishing and because of the wild places. Many people do. Utah did a study on outdoor recreation companies that moved to Utah. This was several years ago. And they said, why do you move to Utah? And we're not talking the Bed Bath and Beyonds. We're talking about the tech companies that are bringing 1,500 people to 3,000 folks to the state. And they said, why did you come to the state? Why did you choose us? And they said, the first reason is workforce. The second reason is access to outdoor recreation. That was the draw to those companies. Banner Health. I was doing something on the web the other day, and all of a sudden I get this ad that pops up, and it says Banner Health is hiring doctors in Casper. And so I started reading it. They didn't talk about the hospital. They didn't talk about the job. What they talked about was the great alpine skiing at Hogadon, the Nordic skiing on top of the mountain biking that was available, and then you could be fishing 12 minutes from your house. That's what they were selling to recruit these folks. So I'm going to throw out a few numbers here. And it's 3 different economic reports that are out there. And those numbers aren't going to all add up because they're apples to oranges when you listen to these. So when you listen, please know that they're different economic reports. They're all done differently. They're all done correctly. They're just done differently as I throw out these numbers. Bureau of Economic Analysis. It's a federal agency. And what they do is they take one segment of the economy and they pull it out and they provide information to you. I'm going to start with those numbers. In 2021, outdoor recreation contributed $1.5 billion to the state's gross domestic product. That's second highest to the extraction industry. It's also the 4th highest in the country at 3.6% of the state's GDP, almost double the national average of 1.8%. Those are real numbers. We were beat out by Hawaii, Vermont, and Montana. I don't know how Montana beat us. I mean, we have Yellowstone, they have the movie, they have the show, but we've got the park. It also provides 15,285 jobs in our state. 13,600 of those are in the private sector. That's an important piece, and I'm going to talk more about that. $659 million in wages and 5.4% of all jobs. We should be proud of what we do. But I'm going to throw out another one that I found very interesting. I'm going to read it because I'll blow it if I don't. Conventional outdoor recreation activities account for 464 million of that 1.5. So roughly 1/3. The mountain biking, the skiing, the other things. But there's a category that is called all other supporting outdoor recreation. That accounts for 746 million, half of that 1.5 billion. This is the grocery stores. This is the liquor stores. This is the gas stations. This is the t-shirt shops. This is the microbreweries. Outdoor recreation is supporting all of those businesses. Out of that 1.5 billion, 1.31 billion is in the private sector. That revenue goes into the private sector. I'm proud of that. I think that's what we should be focusing on. Now, in discussions, you're going to hear me talk a lot about the economic impact. Dan also talked about it, transforming lives, health, sense of community. Those things are really important. That's why I came here. I could care less when I moved here about the economic impact. But when we are talking to community leaders, and when we are talking to legislators, and when we are talking to folks, they want to know, and we're asking for support. They want to know, what's our ROI? What is our return on investment? And we need to have those numbers ready for them. We need to be able to tell them that if your house is close to a non-motorized trail, within a mile of it, your home value is 5% higher. We need to be able to say, for every mile of mountain bike trail that's created, $20,000 to $100,000 every single year goes into the community. Those are the numbers we need to be sharing with people when we talk. State parks, we have a rolling 5-year visitation average. In 2018, that average was 3.2 million people. Fast forward 4 years to 2022, and it's over 5 million. 56% increase in 4 years of our 5-year average. So when we talk about the people are here, the people are coming, that's what this is about. We just finished an economic impact study with the University of Wyoming on our motorized trails program. Outdoor recreation vehicles account for $296 million in direct spending in our state, 2,000 jobs. Snowmobiles, 193 million, and close to another 2,000 jobs. State parks, 161 million and 2,600 jobs. That doesn't mean we have 2,600 jobs in state parks. We have less than 10% of that. What that means is communities like Glendo, communities like Thermopolis thrive because of the services that we provide in that park. Think the Cowboy Cafe at Du Bois. I don't think it would be open in the middle of winter if it wasn't for snowmobilers. Those are the things I'm talking about. All right, intermission. We now break into this discussion. I'm going to read this one. We now break into this discussion with a public service announcement. A quick PSA regarding the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. The SCORP drives our agency's perspective for how land and water conservation funds should be obligated for the next 5 years. Our agency of state parks and culture resources is a pass-through agency for these federal grants, and this SCORP will be our guiding document. We're talking tens of millions of dollars that's going to go out to communities. Anybody here from the SE group? There we go. You guys have been great to work with. They're the consulting company that's working with us. A shout out to you all. Working with those folks, we're trying to put together this plan. Currently, we're in the final push for the provider survey. So if you provide outdoor recreation or any other recreation opportunities, and you have not received a survey, please find Patrick. Patrick, will you raise your hand? Please find Patrick. He will get you that information. For you users, we're going to be coming out with another survey in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be sharing it broad and wide, and we encourage you to fill it out and also spread it out and pass it on to all of your other outdoor recreation users. All right, end of PSA. Now we're going to move on to a rant. Outdoor recreation is a piece of the puzzle for economic diversification in Wyoming. It is not the piece of the puzzle. It is a piece of the puzzle. Another report came out by an organization, and I'm not going to say who they are, in 2018 with legitimate numbers. And their numbers said outdoor recreation contributes $5.6 billion in consumer spending in Wyoming annually. They said it contributes 50,000 direct jobs and $1.6 billion in wages. Real numbers. $515 million in state and local tax revenue. But here's the kicker, and here's what just killed me when I read this. It's a one-pager, and at the bottom, they have in bold, and I've got to read it because it's a quote, outdoor recreation in Wyoming creates more jobs, 50,000, than oil, gas, mining, and extraction combined. Why would we say this as outdoor recreationists? Why would we do that? We don't pay income tax in our state because of the oil and gas industry. Many of you probably went to school right here because of the scholarships that the oil and gas industry helps provide and support. Why would we do that? It's like outdoor recreation, this little fluffy bunny. It's this little baby born bunny that's white and so cute, and it weighs 2 ounces. And we put it in a cage with this 600-pound gorilla that is oil and gas. And the little bunny goes up and bites it on the big toe. It's just not going to end well for the bunny. And I'm going to take that a step further, because our job is to reduce those highs and lows in oil and gas. Our job is to reduce those lows a little bit. And I'm going to go another step further. I sit, as I mentioned, many hours over an MSR stove, over a campfire, collaborative meetings, all kinds of things. And what really gets in my craw is when I have people come in and they say, I am only here for the mountain biking. I'm fighting everything else, and I'm going to fight for mountain biking, and I'm going to fight for nothing else. And I'm going to fight everything else. Revolutionary War, man. United we stand, divided we fall. We've got to work together. Wyoming is big enough that we have the ability to make sure that we can provide all the outdoor recreation that we want to provide, and set this up and design it so everybody can have their cake and eat it too. I call those people the moanlies. They want the me onlys, and all they do is moan because all they are focused on is one thing. I was at a forum, Dominic actually put it on many years ago in Casper, and there was a sporting goods store owner in Casper up on stage with some motorized folks, and he looked over at them and he goes, we hate you guys. You guys hate us. But the great thing about Wyoming is it's big enough that we can have what we want and you can have what you want. That's where we've got to get. We've got to be able to support each other. Dan mentioned I worked for Knowles for a while. And a lot of times when you'd go out in the field, you'd lay a student's gear out and you'd kind of have a checklist. You know, where's your 2 pairs of socks? Where's your this? And you'd have this pile of gear they're going to take. Then you have this pile of peripherals that they wanted to take, but they weren't sure whether they should. You know, I want to bring my 4 Jack Reacher novels. I brush my teeth 5 times a day, so I need a tube of toothpaste this big. And you'd go, okay, those are 28 ounces. This is going to be another 3 ounces. Oh, and I love Tevas. I want to take my Tevas. Okay, great. That's an extra pound. Pretty soon they'd have this big pile and you just look at them and go, ounces make pounds. We're the ounces in outdoor recreation. We're working to make pounds for the state's economy. And it's really important for the health benefits of the health, for community, for livability, all of those things. But it's also for the economic impact. I'm going to give an example of that. We got a call about 3 years ago from a group called Backcountry Discovery Route. These are those multi-sport motorcycles, those BMWs, I think they're KMs or some others. They've got the panniers on the side. They get on the highway and they cruise 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. I think Mike has one. They get on there and they cruise down the highway and then they pull off on dirt roads and go do their thing. And they said, we're going to create a route across Wyoming. And this is a nonprofit organization. And we need some help financially to do this, but believe me, it'll help you in Wyoming. And we said, well, we're not going to contribute any money, but we'll help you develop a route and we'll reach out to communities, but we're going to do it the Wyoming way. And they said, okay. So we reached out to some communities and we said, do you want this? Some said no. We said, okay, take it off the list. Others said yes, and we'll contribute $5,000 for the development. And they created a beautiful video of it, a good educational piece. And they said, we want it. So this route starts in Baggs, Wyoming. It goes up and over the Snowies and comes down through Encampment and goes through Medicine Bow. I was driving through Medicine Bow last year and there's a big banner on the Virginian that says, welcome BDR riders. Way cool. Goes through Shirley Basin, goes over to South Pass City, drops through Shoshone and goes up to the Bighorns, Ten Sleep and the Bighorns. They did an economic impact study. It's not completed, but their estimate is $2.5 million to $5 million a year. Existing roads. I called communities. Patrick called communities. We said, hey, how's this working for you all? They said, it's great for business. We received thank you letters from lodges in the Snowy Range saying, thank you. Our business has doubled and we're starting to sell motorcycle parts. So it's really awesome to see. Ounces make pounds. But developing outdoor recreation isn't easy. And this is something I think sometimes we get caught up in. It's like, oh, let's decide to make a trail. Let's decide to do something. We have 4 really major levels of government that we have to work through. You have the federal government that owns half of the land, and those folks do a good job. They have their own rules they have to follow. They have their own policies. They have their own budgets. We have to work through that piece. And there's a lot of agencies. I'm not going to name them all, but a lot of them are here. You have the state agencies. They have their own rules. You have Office of Tourism. You have state parks. You have state lands. You have all of these, that Game and Fish, WYDOT, who has been exceptionally supportive of what we do. You have all of those that have their own rules. You have a sovereign nation in the middle of our state, in the tribes. Then you throw in the counties and the cities. They need their input. We want to make sure they have their input and we're listening to them. It's not easy working through that maze. Then you throw in the dozens, if not hundreds, of types of outdoor recreationists trying to make use of those lands and their advocacy groups. You have Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, you have Trout Unlimited, Muley Fanatics, Wyoming Outdoor Council, Wyoming Wildlife Federation, Center for Biological Diversity, International Mountain Bike Association, Backcountry Horsemen, Snowmobile Association groups, promoting other groups that promote multiple use. On top of that, you throw in the traditional uses of oil and gas and grazing, and you try and work that minefield. And if you think you can get a trail built in a year, it's not going to happen. We've got to figure that out. All right, I'm going to say something controversial here, and I'm going to say it because I want this discussion to happen over the next couple of days. I pay my federal income tax. It goes back to DC. It comes back through the federal government to those federal agencies that help manage recreation throughout the state. And they do a good job. But outside of that, the majority of outdoor recreation infrastructure funding in this state is paid for by the motorized community, it's paid by hunters and anglers, and it's paid for by oil and gas. And I want to explain that a little bit. Many years ago, hunters went to Congress, and I'm talking 30, 40, 50 years ago, went to Congress, and they said, we're starting to see access go away. We're starting to see habitat degraded. We're not able to hunt as much anymore because there's not as much game. We want you to tax us 11% on everything we buy. Bullets, shotguns, rifles, shotgun shells, and other hunting supplies. We want you to tax us 11%. And we want that money to go into a pot, and we want it to come back to our states and to our communities so we can have the ability to hunt and fish. So for those of you that like to float the bighorn, all of that conservation easement on those private lands that allow you to stop and picnic and do your thing, hunters and anglers, hunters paid for that. Dingle Johnson, another act that came up a few years later, that was the same with fishermen. That launch ramp you use, that bathroom at Wedding of the Waters, that parking lot, that was paid for by hunters and anglers. We're the pass-through for the Recreation Trail Program granting system. That money is accrued by the federal government on federal gas tax on off-highway vehicles. We've had this debate. It's not on Jeeps. It's not on cars and four-wheel drives. It's on side-by-sides. It's on quad runners. They take that federal gas tax and they give it back to the state. And they say, you guys distribute it to communities for trails. 30% of that goes to the non-motorized community. 30% goes to the motorized. 40% goes to diversified. For you non-motorized folks, you're rocking it because you're not paying a dime for this. The motorized community is paying for that piece. Land and Water Conservation Fund dollars, roughly about $2 million a year. Those monies are accrued from offshore oil and gas sell leases in our country. Oil and gas is paying for recreation in Wyoming. Hunters went to the legislature last year, maybe the year before, and they said, we want you to charge us more for a conservation stamp, hunters and anglers. It's $12.50 right now. We want you to charge us $21. Charge us more. And we want that money to go to access. So we have the ability to have more hunting and fishing. Those little ORV stickers that you buy, that you put on your quad runner and you put on your side-by-side or your snowmobile, $15.50 for an ORV, $33 for a snowmobile. That money goes directly to our motorized trails program. We have 7 full-time staff and 16 seasonals that do nothing but build and maintain outdoor recreation vehicle trails, off-road vehicle trails, sorry, and snowmobile trails. We groom, we expand those trails. It's been so successful that the Snowmobile Association went to the legislature 7, 8 years ago and said, we want you to charge us more, charge us $33. So because we see the value in this and we want to make sure that we have the ability to do those things. So I just wanted to throw that out as a conversation piece starter for this conference. Now, Utah has a granting program and they give out 10, 20, 30, $40 million a year. Some is in economic development, some is in building new parking lots. They even have a granting program for people that want to start a new business. Colorado, roughly $70 million a year through the lottery system. Half of the lottery profits go to open spaces, and there's a whole slew of things through Colorado, economic development. They just bought a 19,000 acre ranch in southern Colorado to create a new state park. And Wyoming's got it going on too. Representative Newsom, will you please stand up for just a second, please? We'll clap in a minute, but Representative Newsom brought a bill forth last year to create an outdoor recreation trust fund in the state of Wyoming. And Office of Tourism, I see Amy over here, was very supportive of this. And how it works is through the lodging tax, the Office of Tourism gets their dollars, they create their budget, they make sure the visitor bureaus are taken care of, and the rest goes into a capital and reserve account. In that account, Representative Newsom brought forth the idea of taking $6 million out of that account every 2 years and putting it into a trust fund to make it happen. And the interest off of that would go to building outdoor recreation infrastructure throughout the state of Wyoming. Thank you. And I see Senator Representative Henderson over here as well. Thank you for your support as well. So thank you. It was also one of Governor Gordon's biggest issues and one of the things he really wanted to push and see passed this year, and it did happen. All right, we're winding down a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about a tale of two cities. It's 1984. I took a couple years out of high school to goof off, and I'm a freshman in college, and I got this new thing. It's called a mountain bike. It's got 3 chain rings on the front. Diamondback Apex. Yeah, I called it Old Blue. So me and Old Blue and some buddies, I was in the commercial recreation program at the University of Utah. And me and Old Blue, we said, hey, let's go down to Moab. Let's goof off for a week during spring break. And they said, all right, let's go. So we were going to go jeeping. We were going to do some whitewater paddling. We were going to take our motorcycles and we were going to take our mountain bikes. So my Jeep's loaded up with kayaks and he's got his pickup with a trailer with the motorcycles and the mountain bikes. And we pop on down to Moab. The uranium mill had just closed in Moab. And Moab was freaking depressed at the time. There was a place called Poplar Place that had been burned down on Main Street for years and stayed burned down on Main Street for years. You wanted to get a good cup of coffee and some hash browns and some sausage and eggs for breakfast. It was almost impossible to do. There was Woody's Bar at the end of the town. Don't ask me how I knew that. And there was a city market, few seedy hotels that were struggling. Town was depressed. So we go to City Market and we get our groceries and we're in the parking lot. We're sorting stuff and putting it in coolers. And the big old diesel pulls up. Ford Power Stroke. And the guy looks over and he goes, get out of town, you effing hippies. And it pissed me off because I was not a hippie. I was a redneck. But anyway, we motor on up to the Slick Rock Trail. We'd heard about it. We hadn't been there. Back then, it's not a 2-track, but it's a 15-mile-an-hour dirt road. There's no parking lot. There's one little pull-off for one vehicle. We pulled off and camped right there for 6 days, right next to the road. And the only way we knew the trail was there was red and blue dots painted on the rocks, so we knew our route, where to go. So we pull off and we camp. We have a great time for 6 days. This same group of guys did this for 5 years. And Moab, I just want to step back because Moab fought outdoor recreation tooth and nail for 20 years. They buried their head in the sand. They wanted nothing to do with it. The places still stayed burned down on Main Street, and they tried to run people out of town, and they did not embrace it, and they got overrun. Fast forward 7 years later from when we first went down there, there's still no parking lot. The agencies got caught too. They did not see this onslaught of outdoor recreation coming. There's no restrooms. There's no parking lot. There's no kiosk. Roads are being mavericked all over the place. People are pooping wherever they want. There's litter all over the place. It took Moab 25 years to embrace this and say, we gotta join them because we're fighting them and it's not working. So that's Moab. 25 years. Fruita, Colorado said, we're tired of us seeing all these people coming from the east with mountain bikes on their cars, fueling up, and then driving west somewhere. We want to be the destination for mountain biking in the Intermountain West. We want to be the Mecca. And so they said, how do we do that? And they planned and they planned and they had a lot of conversations. First, they said, well, let's make sure we have bike pathways that go in front of every single retail store in our town. Let's create some roundabouts instead of intersections because it's safer for bikers. Now we need a campground. Let's build a campground, but let's build it close to town so people can actually come to the community and buy their microbrews and do their things and buy their groceries off of their bikes. And let's design the campground so you kind of can't see everybody, and let's provide full hookups with water, power, and electric. Let's have the pull-throughs. Let's have the place where people can sleep in the back of their truck. And let's have stuff for me, the dirt bags, where you can just grab a tent and throw it out and do your thing. And then they said, well, let's design the trails. Let's design the trails where maybe there's 150 people on this trail, 5-mile trail, but let's design it so you think you're the only one that's out there. And let's design those trails so they're close to town. So again, people can bike into town. Now, let's create a pathway from Grand Junction to Fruita, 12-mile pathway, so we can get people to road bike out or mountain bike out from Junction, have dinner, do their thing, and then go back home. Fruita has it going on, and they have built it, and people have come, and it is the Mecca of mountain biking in the Intermountain West. So Moab finally embraced it after 25 years. Fruita planned and built what they wanted. We're at the junction right now in Wyoming where we are Moab. We have the ability, and I'm going to read this because I'll goof it up, but don't. If I don't, we have a window of opportunity to decide right now what we want to be. It's up to Wyoming to figure out the balance of preserving the things we value versus the inevitable growth that is here and that is coming. We need to ID priorities and values and things we want to preserve as this growth takes place and yet allow managed growth. And we need to do this while increasing the economic impact to the state. I've got an old friend, he's actually an old boss. And the saying he's always says is, you're either on the bus, you're driving the bus, or you're getting run over by the bus. This is our time right now. And I, for one, would much rather hop in the driver's seat. We need to figure out how to educate these people when they're coming in. We need to disperse them across communities to provide different outdoor recreation opportunities that those communities want. And we need to concentrate them at times as we move forward. I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.